So let's reread Thank You, Ma'am. I will provide specific instructions on how to mark the text that will help with comprehension. I want you to turn in your student text to pages 50 and 51. We're actually going to be looking at 50 through 54 for this activity. I want you to draw a rectangle around the title, Thank You, Ma'am. Next, we will read the vocabulary words aloud. What's the first bold vocabulary word? Balance means the ability to stay steady and not fall. Roger fell when he lost his balance. Now I want you to write down a sentence beneath the text using the word balance. What's the next word? Permit means to allow. Though he tried to steal from her, Mrs. Jones permitted the boy to sit alone in her apartment near her pocketbook. Now I want you to use the word permit beneath the text on page 50. What's the next vocabulary word? Release means to let go of or to set free. You cannot be released early from school without an adult. Now I want you to write a sentence with the word release beneath the text on page 51. What's our next word? Frail means weak or easily broken. Roger is likely frail because he doesn't have enough to eat. On page 51, beneath the text, I want you to write a sentence using the word frail. Let's continue. What's our next word? Furnished means having furniture, appliances, or basic supplies. Roger's home is not furnished with food for him to eat. Beneath the text, on page 52, I want you to write a sentence using the word furnished. What's our next word? Suede is a soft, velvety leather. Suede is less common in clothing because it's difficult to clean and easy to stain. Beneath the text on page 52, I want you to write a sentence using the word suede. Let's continue. Our next word is presentable. Presentable means fit to appear in public. Roger didn't look presentable because nobody was home to make sure he bathed. Now I want you to write a sentence using the word presentable beneath the text on page 53. What's our next word? Embarrass means to make someone uncomfortable or ashamed. Mrs. Jones was careful not to embarrass Roger about his background. Now I want you to use the word embarrass in a sentence beneath the text on page 53. Let's continue. Our next word is latching. Latching means gripping or fastening onto. Roger latched onto Mrs. Jones's purse, then Mrs. Jones latched onto him. Beneath the text on page 54, I want you to write a sentence using the word latched. What's our last word? A stoop is a small porch. Roger stood outside the door on the stoop. Now I want you to write a sentence using the word stoop beneath the text on page 54. Are there any vocabulary words that are still confusing for you to read or understand? You're going to be reading Thank You, Ma'am, a small section at a time. After each section, you will monitor your understanding by circling the check mark if you understand the text, or the question mark if you don't understand the text. I also want you to draw a question mark over any confusing words, phrases, or sentences. Right now, I'm going to have you read the text on page 50 silently. As you read, be sure to mark the descriptions of the characters, both their physical descriptions and their personality traits. Now I'm going to have you do the directions that are on the board. I want you to circle the check mark or the question mark for this section. And I want you to draw a question mark over any confusing words. What character information did you mark about the woman? Go to lines 1 and 2. Mark the figurative language used to indicate that there were many different things in the purse. On line 2, mark the pronoun it twice. In other words, underline it twice. Draw an arrow from the word it to the noun that it refers to. Go to line 4. Mark the synonym for grab. Go to line 5. Mark the word that means the opposite of in front of. Go to line 6. Number 2 reasons that the boy lost his balance. Go to lines 9 and 10. Mark the phrase that means behind or but. Go to line 11. Mark the phrase that tells how hard the woman shook the boy. Go to line 12. Mark the synonym for purse. Go to line 13. Mark the synonym for allow. On the next line, mark the word that is spelled the same as one of our vocabulary words but has a different meaning. In the margin, write a synonym for the word as it is used here. Go to line 14. Mark the non-standard word for aren't. On the same line, mark the antonym or opposite of proud. Go to line 16. Mark the non-standard word for yes, ma'am. Go to line 18. Mark the phrase that means mean to or intend to. Go to line 19. Edit this non-standard sentence, you a lie. Now I want you to read the text on page 51, which is lines 20 through 41, silently. As you read, mark the descriptions of the characters, both physical descriptions and personality traits. Let's see how well you understood what you read. Circle the check mark or the question mark for this section. Draw a question mark over any confusing words. What character information did you mark about the boy? Though it isn't written in words, what do you know about Mrs. Jones? Write the descriptions in the margin and highlight them. Go to line 22. Mark the phrase that means let you go. Go to line 26. Mark the phrase that means should. Go to line 27. Edit the non-standard sentence part, ain't you got nobody home. Go to line 28. Mark the non-standard word for no ma'am. Go to line 30. Mark the adjective that describes the boy. Go to line 31. Mark the word that means weak and thin. Go to line 33. Mark the phrase that means should. Go to line 38. Mark the word that means physical touch. Mark it with a 1. Go to line 39. Mark the word that means interaction. Mark it with a 2. Go to line 40. Circle the word that indicates that Mrs. Jones has a strict tone. Now I want you to read lines 42 through 73 on page 52. Silently. As you read, mark the descriptions of the characters, both the physical descriptions and their personality traits. Circle the check mark or question mark for this section. Draw a question mark over any confusing words. What character information did you mark about the boy? Though it isn't written in words, what do you know about Mrs. Jones? Write the descriptions in the margin and highlight them. Mark the evidence that suggests that Mrs. Jones trusts Roger. Write trusting in the margin. Go to line 43. Mark the word that represents her arm hooked under his shoulder and around the back of his neck. Go to line 47. Mark the word that means residence. Go to line 54. Mark the transition word that means so. On the same line, mark the phrase that means finally. Go to line 57. Edit "you gonna" using standard English. Go to line 60. Edit "late as it be" using standard English. Go to line 67. Edit "could've" using standard English. Now I want you to read lines 74 through 104 on page 53. As you read, mark the descriptions of the characters, both the physical descriptions and their personality traits. Let's see how well you understood what you read. Circle the check mark or the question mark for this section. Draw a question mark over any confusing words. What character information did you mark about Mrs. Jones? Mark the evidence that suggests that Roger likes Mrs. Jones. Mark the evidence that suggests that Mrs. Jones trusted Roger. Go to line 83. Mark the idiom that means comb one's hair quickly. Go to line 85. Mark the device that Mrs. Jones used instead of a stove. On the next line, mark the synonym for refrigerator. Go to line 90. Mark the idiom that means not trusted. Circle the prefix MIS. MIS means not. Go to line 101. Mark the phrase that tells where Mrs. Jones was coming from when Roger attempted to steal her purse. Estimate the closing time of the beauty shop. Annotate the time in the margin. Now I want you to read the rest of the story on page 54. As you read, mark the descriptions of the characters, both their physical descriptions and personality traits. Now let's see how well you understood what you read. Circle the check mark or the question mark for this section. Draw a question mark over any confusing words. Though it isn't written in words, what do you know about Mrs. Jones? Write the descriptions in the margin and highlight them. Though it isn't written in words, what do you know about Roger? Write the descriptions in the margin and highlight them. Go to line 105. Mark the word that represents Roger. Go to line 109. Mark, come by devilish like that. Draw an arrow from that to what it refers to in the line above. What does that mean? Write the word it means in the margin. Go to line 110. Mark the phrase that means from now on. Go to line 113. Mark the word that represents Roger. Go to line 117. Mark the word that. Draw an arrow from that to what it refers to.